Hello, it's Dave Duford here at Final Expense Agent Mentor, where I help agents like you recruit all their friends, family, and then fire their asses. As you know, today's topic is 6 ways to recruit insurance agents, and I botched the old saying, which I will start off with. It actually is on my most popular video about why the life insurance business is a scam for people. But I started it off by saying how large organizations recruit agents. They hire them in masses, train them in classes, sell all their friends, and then fire their asses. And this saying holds true amongst the recruiting world, unfortunately. And besides that little tongue-in-cheek start to this today's wonderful conversation about the 6 ways to recruit insurance agents, what I am planning to do today, guys, is give you kind of a breakdown on, more or less like an introduction on the recruiting of insurance agents, and give you some reasons why it may be a good idea, as well as ways it may not be a good idea, and then give you some actual methods that I have used or have seen others use to just kind of stimulate the neurons in your brain to think of different ways that you can go out there and find agents. Giselle Castillo, Mr. Castillo, or Mrs. Castillo, not sure. How are you? Thanks for joining. And so that's today's topic. So let's get started. So the first point I wanted to bring up here, as I'm trying to get myself organized, is why recruit insurance agents? That, for many, may be an insane question to even begin to ask. Why? Because some associate recruiting agents to being in the adult babysitting business. In fact, many top producers abhor the idea, abhor it, of recruiting agents and having to deal with them, at least in their own mind, as being a gigantic pain. One of the things that's true about the insurance business, or really just in sales, there is a dichotomy, a vast difference between agents that produce and then recruit. Some can manage better than they can sell, and then others can just produce way better than they can actually bring up, coach, and train a group of individuals to be effective. They're different skill sets, and just because you're a great producer does not make you a great manager or recruiter, and vice versa. Some of the recruiters are out there aren't necessarily the best or at the very top of their game in producing life insurance business, but they should be to some extent. We're going to get more on that in a minute. But hopefully you can kind of see what I'm saying. So yeah, besides the people who think that the idea of recruiting is crazy, there is actually some advantages to recruiting, and I'll kind of give you my perspective on this. So when I first started recruiting, it's been since 2013. That's when I began recruiting insurance agents. I had a couple of years in the business at that point, had ups, had downs, but I felt like I had enough experience producing that I could train other people to do it as well, and I've always loved teaching. And I took the stab at recruiting, not knowing what I was going to get myself into. If this was something I really wanted to do, or maybe it was going to be a bad idea, I wasn't totally sure, but I figured I'd give it a shot. Why not? Because one of the biggest things about recruiting that's a positive advantage is that when you recruit agents, you begin to develop what I would call semi-passive income. So it's not true passive income, in the sense that if you really are going to be good in the recruiting game and you want to build a quality agency with top producers that stick with you, you have got to answer their phone calls. You've got to help them with whatever questions that they have. You've got to be readily available. And for a lot of agents, this is frustrating because they feel like they're going to deal with what they would consider dumb questions. Health questions on the application, or basic sales questions. And there's ways to get around that, but there's no easy way around that, really. You have to deal with people as they come. And for some, especially producers, a lot of them are just natural, or they're just hardcore, and they go out there and work. And what you find is not everybody is like that. People take motivation. People need motivation. They need sales training. They need reinforcement. And what you have to realize to be a good recruiter and trainer and build a solid agency is that the way in which you learn and which you sell and how you perform is going to be completely different than what you'll find other people are capable of. Everybody's got their own little approach and their strengths and their weaknesses. And the best coaches and coaches and recruiters, they identify those and they leverage those to bring up people to the best of their abilities. So, but back to the point, a reason I recruit, and I still do, is I love training agents. I love dealing with agents. And quite frankly, I enjoy it more than the actual selling process. I like helping people out with life insurance, but it's really a thrill to take somebody who is doubtful and unsure, they're sad with the way their life is, and they want to make it better, and they give it their all, and I'm able to at least escort them, not do it for them, but show them the way, how to be successful, how to dial into a system, and help people in and around their communities. It's really exciting to see people generate a lifestyle for them that is separate from being stuck to a corporate 9-to-5 job. So I like that. That's really fun, and I really feel useful because I know the business very well and can help a lot. So, so why recruit agents? Because once you've developed, if you're really good at it and you really put your heart into it and you're really committed to the process, then what happens is people become loyal to you because you've earned their loyalty through helping them out, through showing them the way, through putting them through a sales process. And what's great is as they become trained and as they know what they're doing, they eventually get to the point where they're self-sufficient. They are able to go out there and make sales, and you won't necessarily hear from them as much as you were, but you make a cut of the income. Of course, that's the upside to this business, is that you are going to make a percentage between your contract level and theirs on each sale that they make. And the more agents you got out there that are productive like that, the more that you're able to make an income that isn't directly tied to sales production face to face, but is more connected to just servicing your agents and making them happy, which in a sense isn't as much hard work as the sales training or the sales activity is. It is hard work in a different way, but not exactly the way as sales training is, or sales itself is. So one question a lot of people ask is, what happens when when you get into the business? Should you recruit immediately or should you wait? I am a big advocate that one of the biggest problems in this business is there is a lack of training. It's one of the methods we're going to talk about is multi-level marketing approach. It definitely works in this business, and some of the largest organizations, their entire focus is on bringing in fresh blood, warm bodies as quickly as possible from the onset of someone becoming an agent, and duplicating this turnstile approach over and over again. My belief is, though, that this has propagated an industry that is severely lacking in sales training skills. It's severely lacking in prospecting and new business generating skills, and is significantly lacking a real long-term perspective on success. And that's a shame when you have organizations that just want to get into the business and believe in the shotgun method, that throw everything up against the wall and see what sticks, and then get your friends and family to throw them up with the wall and see what sticks. It's frustrating because it's not giving you're not doing your job, first of all, because if you recruit agents and you don't know what you're doing, and you don't for at least 6 to 12 months of full-time effort, because you're not going to have gone through the ups and the downs. You're not going to intimately understand the market, the people you sell to, plus the products that you sell, and the experiential benefits that you get. That's just really hard to verbalize, even for me, who's been doing it for a long time. But if you start recruiting guys in and you're selling them on blue sky and you're giving them the Kool-Aid and it sounds great, if you don't know how to help these people get to be successful, then you're doing them a disservice. And that's the biggest problem I've always had coming in. So here's my approach. You need to commit to a particular type of insurance niche, a product, and be good, become good. You don't have to be the best. It helps to be the best, I think, to some extent. But you don't have to. You could be in the top 20%. You can be top 10%. But you've got to have a level of sustained success. And you have to have a passion for teaching, and you've got to have patience. You got to help and be willing to help and have a heart to teach and help. But only until you've gotten at least a year's experience. Really, that's the best. 6 months, it's kind of short, but at least a year's experience. Because here's the thing, you're going to have something to actually teach these people. Plus, hopefully, if you're doing really well, you're still going to personally produce and recruit. One of the biggest things, and this gets to the next section, is what are the downsides of recruiting agents? Well, there's a couple of downsides. First of all is that if you start to recruit agents en masse, it's going to invariably take away from your personal production activity. So a lot of guys, they get into recruiting and they start recruiting agents, but that takes them away from their clients. So instead of doing their normal 15 appointments a week, they start doing 10, then that may even go lower. And what happens is their income through personal production is dramatically affected. And it just turns out that it takes a long time to recruit a bunch of agents and find and hand select the best ones that will, and then they got to stick with you for a long time. So the process of building a successful agency that brings you this semi-passive income isn't as fast as accumulating cash flow as it is in producing personal business. So you're going to put a lot of time in up front without a lot of return, and it may take years sometimes to build something of significance. So you have to have that mindset. So the best thing to do is not to give up personally selling. In fact, you should still go and be dedicated to your daily and weekly goals of personal production, and just be willing to work a lot more than you were as a salesperson to make up for the fact that it's going to take time to develop a solid agency with solid producers. Also, the downside to recruiting agents is essentially what you're doing in this business, ladies and gentlemen, is that you are underwriting everybody that you see. So what I mean by that is you're essentially acting as a credit card in the sense that everybody comes in and wants advances because they have to pay their bills, they have to pay off what they're owed. And so what they do is you got to get an advance. And in every company, in every marketing organization forces, and they should, forces the upline, you, the recruiter, to sign off or co-sign on advances. And so if this guy goes out and produces, and he writes a bunch of bad business and then walks off and disappears, then it is totally on you to come up with that money to pay off that debt. I'll give you a couple of examples here to scare you straight, because this can be a big problem. It's affected me, not to a tremendous extent like it's affected others, but I'll give you a few quick stories. I know a guy in Georgia, very good producers, gone on conventions. He recruited one agent. He was an NFL player. Thought very highly of him. Guy's a hard worker. Went out and sold 60 policies in the first 2 months. And within the next month or two, 58 out of the 60 policies lapsed. He owed $15,000 in chargebacks, and the guy disappeared. He couldn't pay for it, even though he got all that advance money, blew it on something. And he was obviously, committing white-collar crime. He was fraudulently submitting applications, I think. But it rolled up to the guy, and he owed 15 grand on one dude, okay? I have another agent I heard about in North Carolina who was doing the same thing, writing policies on dead people and using fake Social Security numbers. She had like $20,000 in advance commissions, I think, rolled up to the upline or something like that before she got arrested. I have an agent personally that I thought the world of, that I was pretty positive on, and the guy's left me with like literally, it's about $10,000 to $15,000 in debt. So, it happens to everybody. And it's something that you've got to be in a position to weather the storm, because there are guys out there that will sell you the world that sound great, that are very convincing, and they're full of shit. They're liars, and they have no integrity. And many times when you go back and think about it, you saw that stuff right from the beginning. And you shouldn't have recruited the guy, as I have learned personally. So, but this is stuff you have to be ready to take a risk on. You've got to judge each agent by what you feel are standards of maximal success. Plus, they've got to have the integrity to pay back their debts. And a lot of these people that screw you over on commissions, hey, Lakita, how you doing? A lot of these people that do that, if you look at their personal lives, they've committed the same kind of indebtedness tremendously to other people, and they have no regard for anybody but themselves. So this kind of gets into that whole, well, who do you recruit and what are you looking for in the qualities? I can tell you A.L. Williams, when he recruited agents, he said he only wanted older people that weren't single, that were married, and I believe had children, and already had careers. because his perception was in recruiting these people, he was bringing on people who were inherently interested in protecting their family. They didn't want to be slagged with a bunch of debt. And he had a particular process in how he sold. In fact, one of the big things A.L. Williams taught was that he taught his agents a two-step model to sell. He would go in, much of his sales were made off of replacing whole life insurance. So he would show them what they had and then sell them on the concept and say, I'm not going to sell you, I'm going to come back. And then I'm going to show you some comparisons so we can do this right and take our time. And so what happened was the guys that didn't do that for his business, there was one organization in Texas where the guy literally had everybody who in these opportunity meetings where agents would come in and see what A.L. Williams was about. This guy would make everybody sign immediately up for a policy. The guy was a big producer, but ended up quitting, had chargebacks, caused all sorts of problems for the company. But it goes to show you that there is a process in recruiting agents the correct way. And there are guys you got to be very wary of. You got to be very good at reading people. You have to have standards to sort out the people that aren't a good match for what you do, because the downside is that you can get creamed, literally creamed, on recruiting a bad agent, and it just takes one guy. Imagine if it was 2 or 3. You know, you're looking at 40, 50 grand in debt, and there are literally there's people out there on top of that set up scams where they get, I'm not going to share exactly what they do because I don't want to give anybody any ideas. Nobody, of course, on this video would do any of this. But there's setups to where people will go around and work these IMOs like myself and write a bunch of shit business and make all these advances and then disappear into the nethers. So this is real. I might as well shoot you straight. I mean, none of these marketing organizations want to mention this stuff, but you are co-signing every single guy that you bring on. So you have the obligation to yourself and your family and to the long-term health of your career to set up standards and to stick by them. Never cut corners recruiting guys. Always make sure the people you recruit are quality, their integrity, and if you have any doubt, even if it's small, you got to trust your gut. Donald Trump trusts his gut. That's what he says in his book. He is big on instinct, and there's a reason why, because instinct usually is right because it's the sum cumulative of everything that we've experienced. So instinct is typically a good idea. Okay, so now I've kind of primed the pump here. Let me actually get to the topic today. What are the 6 methods to recruit agents? Hopefully I've warned you while also educating you on what the opportunity is, as well as what the downsides are. So first of all, the first one here is multi-level marketing. So this is where you would join an organization that is designed to be built upon the multi-level marketing approach. So there are large organizations in the mortgage protection business. If you do any sort of job ads approach, you'll see their stuff displayed prominently on Monster.com and Craigslist. Also, you'll see, the perfect example would be A.L. Williams, or in the insurance business, or that's not around anymore. Or, just think of trying to think of a multi-level marketing, Avon or Mary Kay. The concept is they sell a product, right? And then what happens is you buy into the product, but part of that sales process is educating the buyer on the opportunities of selling the product and going into their sphere of contact to begin to sell product and then also recruit. Beachbody is one of those that actually does it successfully these days as well. And so the thing with multi-level marketing is it's based upon the friends and family approach. You guys know how I feel about it. I kind of came out the gate swinging. I am not a big proponent of this, especially in insurance, because we're dealing with people's finances that may dramatically affect their livelihoods or the loved ones' livelihoods when they pass away. So I think in sales, it's much more complicated than it looks on the surface. So I'm all for bringing people in that you know into the business, but I think you owe it to your friends and family members, so you don't burn a bridge with them, to do a good job of understanding the business first and becoming in a position to where you can train it effectively based on experience. One thing a lot of people don't like about multi-level marketing is they don't want their friends and family in their business, literally. I'll be honest with you guys. One of the things I decided in my business is I don't want my wife selling insurance. Not that I think that she couldn't, But I guess part of it was I grew up with a father whose wife was intimately in every step of his business, and that's the way they wanted it. And they grew more into partners as opposed to marital partners, if you know what I mean, business partners instead of marital partners. And their divorce ended, or it ended in divorce. And I guess I like to separate business and pleasure. So that's a personal preference for me. I know a lot of guys out there don't feel the same way, and that's fine. But I don't like the idea of going to my family members and mom and say, hey, mom, why don't you sell some of this insurance? You know, and if you're a guy that hasn't had a lot of experience in this business, you may burn bridges. And family and friends and those relationships are more important than business. You can always get a new business. You can't always get a new family. You know, so you got to really think hard before you do something like that. And multi-level marketing pushes that. So I've been kind of like not so hot on that. So, okay, so number 2, association with a captive carrier. So the benefits with this, and we'll kind of have some subsections of this in a minute. But if you're associated with a captive carrier, then what happens and what that means is that, let's say you're with Lincoln Heritage or Senior Life or some company that at least wants you to focus your entire effort on selling their product. One of the benefits if you decide to recruit in a captive organization is they've got a well-defined approach to recruiting. It may be a blend of multi-level marketing. It may be a blend of their own activity. But they've got a well-defined program. They understand how the recruiting game works for them. And they're looking for people that can train, that enjoy the process, that want to take on an agency. And they've got a predefined system set up for it that has been tested in a lot of different environments with success and failure. And that means something for a guy that's just ultimately interested in recruiting. Of course, there's downsides of that. Captivity is captivity after all. But if your heart is set on recruiting and captivity isn't much of an issue, or carrier selection isn't, then something like this is a good idea. And I would, if all I cared about was just recruiting and not product and upside potential for the producer, and I was okay with dialing into a system like this, and I would definitely say Lincoln Heritage would be the place to start, or maybe even something like National Agents Alliance. Those are, but probably more of the Lincoln Heritage variety if it was in final expense. Okay, so point number 3 here is exclusive carrier contracts. So this is product versus territorial. So this is an interesting setup. I actually had something like this at one point. So let's say you are an organization and you've got a lot of contacts, or you've got a really good relationship with an independent agency or an independent company that doesn't recruit in a captive environment. You can go to them and have a product custom designed and then be able to offer that with exclusive contract rights. So there is a guy, I don't know his name, but he offers a final expense plan that's completely telephonic. And they do a lot of business with this company, but he has the exclusive rights. And so what's nice about that, obviously, is everything goes through him. He is the middleman. And so, and if you got a hot enough product and people, want that product, then you get a piece of every business that comes through. There's another guy that does the same thing with an independent contract, that it's a face-to-face product. And he's had a relationship with this company for several dozen years. He's been in the business a long time. He helped crafted the product. He makes a cut of every sale. He makes a cut of every part of the policy fee. So there's a very lucrative setup with how this particular individual's arrangement works. But that's something that takes a lot more time. But it's nice because he's not necessarily designed or forced to be recruiting constantly, although he definitely does. So there's some definite advantages to that. That's something that takes a lot of time and effort. But there's a lot of companies that don't know anything about final expense. They would love to get involved in the final expense market, but there's some perceived danger into it. And with a good producer that understands products and the competition, there's definitely opportunity. In fact, that's what Randall Baskin, who sold American Continental to not Aetna, but it's now known as Aetna. He developed Medicare supplements back in the 70s and 80s, I think, exclusive arrangements with insurance companies. Made a lot of money that way, and he was the top level guy, and he saw a market niche and exploited it. So there's always stuff like that in this business. Also, so kind of related to that is a territorial exclusive contract. So I worked with a company, and this is what I had. I had an exclusive contract with one carrier in several states. So I had recruiting privileges for anybody that came in through this particular company, that they would be recruited directly to me. So there was obvious benefits. They had recruiting advantages that I could exploit to as well. So not a lot of companies do that anymore. That's kind of old school. Lincoln Heritage is one of those companies that's old school. They have regional constructs. Different organizations have recruiting rights over different states. And, so they get the advantages of first dibs if anybody comes through those states. So point number, let's see here. I think I only got 5 here. Go figure. Well, we'll just call territorial exclusivity number 4. Point number 5 is contract pimps. So let me explain what I mean by contract pimps. So a contract pimp is somebody who spams the phone and recruit. If they've got a license and they've got a life insurance association with the carrier, they'll spam the phones or just cold call and just farm for contracts. I like calling them contract pimps because what happens is they just recruit a bunch of people without really the idea of building a relationship. It's just about getting as many people contracted as possible. The problem with this is that it does work. There's a large organization that built their empire around it. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the agency, or I should say insurance recruiting business. And they just have a floor of people that cold call all day. You've all probably got cold calls from these guys. And they just recruit and farm contracts. But the problem with that is that you got to pimp a bunch of contracts to get the first person to write. So you literally, I've heard of people who have used the farm contract method, and they'll get 5 to 10% of the ones they actually get recruited to actually sell something. And then that's just something. What about a continuous something? That's a totally different ballgame. So it's a huge numbers game, and it's a grind in front of the phone. You got to grind it out, talk to people, and what the problem is I think in a sense you're turning that into a commodity. You're not offering value. You're not offering anything above and beyond, because what really people don't want is contracts pimped to them. What really people want, and this is what I do, is a service-driven approach. This is the last approach. I think for anybody that's interested in recruiting, model what I do. The thing is, in this business, I'm telling you guys, I think I started off talking about this. This business is just totally lacking training. It's lacking connection with a mentor. It's and I mean across the board, not just final expense, but I mean any particular insurance sales. It's just not there. And there's so much opportunity for the agent who has aspirations to recruit to create a program that doesn't sell a product or doesn't sell an insurance product to their people that they're recruiting, but what they sell is a system, that they sell a system that will allow the agent, the new agent, to effortlessly dial in, to not have to make up and think up every aspect of the program. It's all been done for them. It's turnkey. It's like a franchise. The agent comes in, they get the value, they get the coaching, they get the training, and then they develop into, if they've got the stuff to be successful, they develop into a successful producer in which they can realize the whole reason to become an insurance agent to begin with, which is freedom to determine your life, freedom to not work for somebody else to make them rich, freedom to make the income that you want to make. In doing that, it's not about pimping a contract. It's about showing the way, having a system in place to do that. And then not just showing it to them, but interacting with them continuously, helping develop them to become successful. So my approach to this is that this is critical to the success of anybody that's recruiting, and that the more value you provide your agents, the more loyalty you'll get, the better success that they'll see, and the more money you'll make as a recruiting agency. This is the real value that is lacking in this business. And yeah, you can recruit a bunch of people and not really actively train them, and some of them will just be successful in spite of themselves. That's certainly the thing. But there's a lot of people out there that would get out of this business because they didn't have the training or the proper lead program set up or the proper aspects designed. And so if you can develop a system when whatever it is that you're selling, and you realize that what people are interested in is a system that reduces the amount of uncertainty, that is turnkey, meaning you've thought of all the things that are necessary to become successful, and you've created a system in which you can take an agent who has the right stuff, plug them into it, take them through it to become successful. You'll get a lot more success, short and long term, with an approach like that that's well thought out, that's not designed to be a shotgun approach to throw them up against the wall, but is designed to develop agents to be successful. That's what I do. It's worked very well for me. And I do this despite a lot of my competition, which is either totally driven by multi-level marketing, recruit your recruits, and then have the recruits recruit, or they're captive and they've got large resources to recruit. This market is huge, guys, for recruiting. It's going to continue to grow. The average insurance agent is basically 60. They're hitting retirement age, folks, in the next 10 years. And somebody's got to step in and replace these people because the age or the population's growing. Every life is an opportunity to sell insurance. And despite technological advances, and certainly the web has caused some disruption in the sales model, this is primarily a face-to-face driven business. And you can still build a business around recruiting agents to go out there and do simple processes that have worked for decades, which is developing leads consistently, getting in front of people and showing them how to do that, to sell a product that solves a particular solution, and how to rinse and repeat that. So in summary, what we talked about is the benefits to recruiting agents, the ability to create a semi-passive income. We talked about why you should wait to recruit agents until you've developed enough personally and shown some level of consistency and success. Also, I talked about the downside of recruiting, essentially that you're co-signing every single person and you're obligated to their chargebacks if they decide to be deadbeats, and understanding that it is a huge risk in this business if you're not thought out on that. And then we talked about the 6 ways to recruit, or the 6 most popular methods to recruit, which include multi-level marketing, approach, association with a captive carrier to use and leverage their resources, an exclusive contract, whether you've got a product that you've designed or you're part of that you get exclusivity in distributing, whether that's a product or territorially based, where you've got a geography set up to where you can utilize resources. You talked about just farming contracts, or as I say, tongue-in-cheek, contract pimps, problems with that. And then lastly, the service-driven approach to recruiting and to developing a well-rounded agent that can be drawn into a system of success. I hope you enjoyed this video. We talked about a lot here. I know if you guys are interested in recruiting, it's going to be interesting to you. If you've got questions about anything recruiting based, totally feel free to ask them. If you haven't yet, please give me a thumbs up or leave a comment below. I'll be happy to address anything I didn't necessarily clarify or discuss. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a good weekend, and we will see you next week bright and early. Dave Duford, Final Expense Agent Mentor. Take care.